President Trump says fixing this deal, and I'm talking NAFTA, will be, quote, easy.
Well, we know that's not true. He said that on the campaign trail. He said that while he's in office. And as you mentioned earlier, we have Paris Climate Agreement, we have TPP, we have the Iran deal, and now we have this.
Wait, he said Iran's a whole new country.
It's a whole
new world.
Different because so we know that this is just P.T. Barnum's-like stuff. What's interesting here is that the president is behaving as if the United States is the only global actor. As if those countries in Europe, they don't have their own individual interest, that they're not concerned about their own individual industries, that they're not concerned about their own workers. And as he, in some ways, singles out the United States as the rogue country, the G6+1 actually will have tangible implications for American workers here, will have tangible implications for industry here. So I just think he's making a mess of things. And even though I am critical in some ways of NAFTA and tariff agreements because I want a conversation about American workers.
You can be critical about all of those things. All of those trade agreements are outdated and complicated and they need to be updated. But saying we've got this, no problem, they're massively complicated. Matt Welsh, they do have a lot on their table at the G7. Why is it, in your opinion, do you think the president goes with, how about the G8, where's Russia?
I can't fathom why he would just sort of bring that up. So what Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin had in common, regardless of if there's any kind of relationship between them, they share an ideology to some degree. And that ideology has always been to treat with hostile skepticism these large supranational post-World War II institutions. NATO, Donald Trump has on the campaign trail, he's added stress towards these things. The EU, he treats as some kind of anti-American plot as opposed to a thing that America really helped try to put together as a free trade zone after World War II, because we recognize that trade creates friendship between nations and we didn't want them to continue to have war. So he's added stress to this. He's adding stress to the G7 meeting by piecing out, like on day 2, there's not going to be a shared communique. So all of these things he shares in common with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin sees these institutions as a threat to him, so he wants to undermine them. So to be skeptical and hostile towards all of those institutions and then say, well, we should add Russia into it, he's trolling. That can only be seen as trolling. Russia should have never been in the G7 to begin with, or the G8 to begin with. They weren't a big enough economy. It was a sop thrown at them at the time.
Let's remember, didn't have a big enough economy. As we continue to call Vladimir Putin and Russia a superpower, we're making them a superpower. Their economy is smaller than Italy's. Jonathan, you wrote that the president is deliberately isolating the U.S. And, you know, former members of his administration, the Gary Cohns of the world, always said, it's not America. You know, America first is not America alone. But America alone is exactly what President Trump is touting. Maybe that's why Gary doesn't work there anymore.
Right. I mean, the theory from the White House is that by doing this through the strategy and the individual tactics, that they're ultimately going to bring everyone else to the White House doorstep and, to borrow Rudy Giuliani's language, you know, on their hands and knees begging for the United States to cut deals with them again. What we're seeing is the exact opposite right now, which is that the president has alienated the United States from the from basically our allies in the world. He's getting in a trade war with our allies in the world, and they are basically saying to him, we're happy dealing without you if we have to. And we've heard that message time and again. I mean, Angela Merkel, right after the elections in 2016, basically said that the European folks would act on their own if they want to. I think what's fascinating about this Russia commentary this morning is the G7 is a group of countries that are like-minded on economics and on national security issues. And what the president is saying is that he thinks Russia is like-minded with the other countries after they tampered with the American election. That's really, I mean, it's kind of an astounding comment.
And Germany. I mean, it's amazing.
I mean, the idea that Russia's like-minded, I mean, the only people that Russia seems to be like-minded with are President Trump and maybe some of his very close allies.
I don't know that Russia is like-minded with Trump. I think Trump might be like-minded with Russia. The president also spoke about pardons. Let's take a listen.
I'm not above the law. I never want anybody to be above the law. But the pardons are a very positive thing for a president. I think you see the way I'm using them. And yes, I do have an absolute right to pardon myself. But I'll never have to do it because I didn't do anything wrong.
Help me. Eddie?
It's just
it's really good when a TV guest is speechless. Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing, right? So there's a sense in which, to use Chris Matthews' language, Giuliani is principally Donald Trump's fog machine. So he's out here to distract, to delegitimize the Mueller investigation. Trump has found, like your toddler, remember my son when he was young, he found that toy that he fixated on. Donald Trump has fixated on the pardon because it actually reflects, right, the way in which he conceives of himself as the president and how he might exercise power. So all of this it's almost like the theater of the absurd. You could imagine Samuel Beckett staging this in some ways as he says, try again, fail again, better. So it seems to me that this is absurd. Giuliani is part of the circus, and Donald Trump is just simply doing what Donald Trump does.
Is Giuliani only serving Trump, and Trump likes that? I mean, Giuliani, misspeaking, and he had to talk it back about Kim Jong-un getting on his knees and begging, and then Giuliani said, oh, it was a figure of speech, and there's Mike Pompeo. No, that's not how we feel. Rudy Giuliani seems to continue to have the president's support. When Peter Alexander asked the president about Stormy Daniels, he said, I'm like-minded with Rudy. Now, listen, he was only asking him, do you think porn is a respectable business? And there's a lot of people out there who could say, I don't think it's respectable. But it doesn't mean that person doesn't deserve credibility, doesn't mean they don't deserve rights, it doesn't mean they're not honest. Why is it that Trump continues to stand with Rudy when nobody else is, not even his own administration?
I think it's because Giuliani is fulfilling a public role here. There's the public case of this will end up in Congress in terms of impeachment. So they're working the kind of a public relations angle of this. After the Mueller investigation is done, Congress will
that public role is town clown, court jester?
You know what? They're playing to the Republican Party here, so they're trying to delegitimize the Mueller investigation. They're trying to throw smoke bombs out there to make people think that it would be a bad idea, that it's kind of an obstruction, it's a vaporware charge here. So that's part of that process, as is negotiating the terms of however the president will deal with Mueller or not. And that is a very public and a private negotiation that's happening concurrently, because if it becomes a big public subpoena situation, then that's going to go to the Supreme Court. So it's a kind of a public dance. All of that, Trump, I think, as a bad client, generally speaking, as someone who...
Because he doesn't pay his lawyers?
Because he can't shut up.
Because he also doesn't do that.
He doesn't do that, but he can't... He thinks that he can bluff and New York his way through life here in Washington, D.C. And so bad clients tend to be really impressed with showy, barky, fellow New York type of lawyers there. You're going to get bad legal advice and legal service in that context, because Mueller is not some kind of...
Okay, Jonathan, New York also has some extraordinary investors and traders. That's something the president isn't. Now, he has talked about unfair trade as a national security issue. Unfair trade with our closest allies. And that argument makes no sense. And on this same day, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are meeting. How much can those two gentlemen take advantage of this self-induced America isolationism?
I think they can take advantage of it quite a lot. I mean, there's a real opportunity to exploit divisions between this union of G7 countries. We heard Justin Trudeau, I think it was yesterday, basically say that it was laughable that the President of the United States thinks that Canada is a national security threat. That's the reason that he slapped these tariffs on Canada. This is a real war going on here among longstanding allies that only benefits the other countries.